Blueberry Lemon Meringue Cheesecake. This dessert has a bunch of cool elements that come together to create something even better. Start off with a biscuit base, layer on top of that some lemon cheesecake, some lemon curd, and blueberry sauce. Wrap that up in a meringue and blowtorch that bad boy to give it some delicious texture, then serve. Stick around to find out how to create each of these elements, how to layer them together, and one of the many challenges that I've tried to overcome. What's cooking, good looking? Blueberry Lemon Meringue Cheesecake. Hello, I'm Tyrone. Like your shoelaces, you tie your own. In today's episode, we are creating a blueberry lemon meringue cheesecake, and the first step of it is to make the biscuit base. Now, the most important part of this is biscuit choice. Choose butternut biscuits. If you choose any other sort of biscuit, you'll require a lot more butter just to get it to stick together. Speaking of the butter, melt that, put that over your crushed butternut biscuits, and mix that in. Once it's all mixed, onto your baking paper in a springform cake tin. These are about 20 to 25 centimeters wide. Push down that biscuit base as hard as you can, and then leave that to set. The next step of this blueberry lemon meringue cheesecake is the lemon cheesecake. So I'm putting into my mixer 375 grams of cream cheese. Well, I'm doing a double recipe, so double 375 grams of cream cheese, a bunch of lemon rind. I'm juicing the lemons since that's out, saving the juice for later, and half a cup of caster sugar. Now, you need 3/4 of a cup of caster sugar, in my case, doubled for this step, but don't put all of it in here. Now, when separating eggs, the first egg, separate the yolk out and put the white into the first bowl. Then the next egg you separate the yolk out and put the white into a second bowl. You don't want any of the yolk into that egg white because that egg white's very fragile, and when you blend it together, when you mix it, when you whisk it, whatever you do to it, if there's any yolk in it, it won't whisk up properly. After you've done that, tip it into that first bowl and repeat for as many eggs as you need. In this case, 4. 4 egg yolks go in, a bunch of corn flour as well, and blitz that until it's completely obliterated. Once you're happy with the obliteration levels, add 250 grams of mascarpone, whatever it's called, and throw that, and a little bit of lemon juice, 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. I knew that I juiced those lemons for a reason, and this was that reason. Once that's barely mixed, throw that into a bowl. Completely wash out your mixer and add some egg whites. I find a good way to make sure it's completely clean is to add a little bit of strong alcohol, a few spirits, at the very start of the process. So in this case, I added either a brandy or a gin, which just killed off anything that was left in there. You don't need much. Whisking the eggs together until soft peaks form, and while they're forming, slowly add the caster sugar. You can see I was resting the half cup of caster sugar, or the single recipe amount, the 1/4 cup of caster sugar, on the top of the mixer, so it slowly vibrated the caster sugar in. Fold that through the rest of the mix, and then into your cake tin. Once you're happy with how it's sitting in the cake tin, throw those bad boys into the oven for 50 minutes. Now make sure your oven is preheated at 150 degrees Celsius or 300 degrees Fahrenheit. After it's cooked for 50 minutes, leave it in your oven overnight with the oven off. That will slowly bring the temperature down, meaning that the cake won't sink into itself and it will retain its structure. If you open the door and let the heat out immediately, then it will sink into itself. The next part of this recipe is the lemon curd. If you have a great lemon curd recipe, you should by all means use that. This is the same lemon curd that you would put in a lemon meringue pie. Now, what's good about this is once you've got the ingredients, throw them into a pan and heat that up. The ingredients: 3 eggs. I don't know how many times I need to say this, but I'm doing a double recipe. So 6 eggs, 2 tablespoons of lemon rind, half a cup of lemon juice, 3/4 cup of caster sugar, and 100 grams of butter. Each of these things can be approximated. They shouldn't be, but they can be. I whisk the eggs before adding them, and when I add them to a slightly warmed buttery lemon juice sugar mix. That's just the rest of the ingredients. Bring that to the boil, well, nearly to the boil. As soon as you see the first bubble, then it's time to bring it off the heat. You don't want to boil this too rapidly or even at all. Once you're done, into a container and allow that to cool by putting it in your fridge. This next layer is the blueberry sauce. I find that this tastes a lot better than just putting raw, fresh blueberries on top, because the flavour actually infuses its way through the entire slice of cake. What you do, take your blueberries, put them in a pan on some heat, add less water than you think and more sugar than you think, a dash of lemon and a few fresh chopped basil leaves. Bring that to the boil and then let it simmer until the liquid thickens. It really is that simple. To cool it down, put it in a separate container and into either the freezer, into the fridge, or into a bucket of frozen or icy water. Whatever your choice. Make sure it's cooled down before you put it on your cake. The final part of this blueberry lemon meringue cheesecake is the meringue. This is super easy to make. Whisk up some egg whites. We've already looked at how to separate an egg and how to sanitize your mixer earlier. I'm choosing to sanitize this with either an oaked vodka or with some apple brandy. Not much, just enough to kill some germs. And then blitzing the blender with that just so that it coats each of the surfaces. All of the egg whites go in and then whisk away until solid peaks form. If you're wondering what on earth you're going to do with the remaining egg yolks, have I got a plan for you. Use these bad boys in some carbonara. Since you're looking to make some carbonara, I've made an amazing video where I make carbonara. Check it out on my channel. Also, smash that like, share, subscribe button if you like this sort of content. Now that you've got all of the bits for this, what on earth do you do with them? Well, the final piece is to put all of the individual pieces, to put them each into one big piece together. The meringue goes into a piping bag and pipe that in loops and spirals around your cheesecake. It looks pretty pretty as you do this, but it looks even prettier when you torch it with a blowtorch. How gorgeous does that look? It's your choice whether you use a smooth or jagged, I don't know what they're called, smooth or jagged piping attachment for your bag. Into that goes the lemon curd. You don't need much, probably about 1/2 centimetre. I don't know what that is in inches, like 1/3 of a baseball, I don't know. And then on top of that goes the blueberry juice. Now you might notice the slight issue that I began to have at about this point. I'm not saying it was a consistent issue, but moving rapidly along, adding little bloops of meringue across the top of the cake is where it's at. And then torching those. On top of that goes some fresh blueberries, just lightly sprinkled over the top. And I'm not saying it was a consistent issue, but that's how I hid that consistent issue, by putting a lid over the top that hopefully held it together. By this point, I had identified that the issue was the meringue wasn't meant to be as structural as I was using it to be. So I tried making it thicker, but that also didn't work. Across the back, the blueberry juices are running over the top. So how about we fix it by angling the other? Nope, okay. I'll just quickly torch these and put a lid over the top. Still tasted pretty freaking good. Once you're done torching, you can leave that to rest for as long as you want, but the sooner you serve it, the more intact the cake will be. I serve these with my beef ribs. Again, check out the channel to see how I made those. Doesn't it look good? That's a nice jobbly wiggle of the bit on top. One of the potential solutions that I had to the cake bursting at its seams was to take it out of the oven a little bit too soon so that it sunk in on itself, and then to use the cake tin structurally. Added a bit of gelatin powder to the blueberries, put them on hot and allowed that to set in the fridge. This was a solution, which meant that it stopped running all over everything everywhere forever. I'm not saying it was a good solution, it was just that it was a solution. What I didn't like was what that then did to the texture of the blueberry sauce. It meant that it came out like jelly, which should have been utterly predictable, rather than a thick and saucy sauce. So I think next time I'll do this, I'll drain the blueberries through a mesh or something, keep that juice in a container and just pour it over the individual pieces once they've been cut. Also, this is what happens when you transport eggs that have already been whisked in the piping bag to someone else's house to create a delicious dessert for them. It was delicious, but it didn't quite have the same look about it. It maintained the structure, but at what cost? And is that a risk you're prepared to take in this economy? Well, that's about all that I have for you today. So, to top off this video, I'm going to remind you, you should probably stay hydrated. Go grab yourself a glass of water. That's all.